If you would, let us read together 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 20 to 22. And it reads like this: No, but I say that the things which the nations sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. And I do not want you to become sharers with the demons. You cannot be drinking the cup of Jehovah and the cup of demons. You cannot be partaking of the table of Jehovah and the table of demons. Or are we inciting Jehovah to jealousy? We are not stronger than he is, are we? The table of demons is a real feeding arrangement. It is designed to make humans sharers with the demons. In other words, the demons feed humans satanic propaganda that is designed purposely to condition people to feel like they do, to think like they do, to express themselves like the demons do, always in opposition to Jehovah. Now, when humans do this, feed at the table, they are in fact worshiping the demons. Now, we know that the table of Jehovah, the spiritual feeding program of Jehovah, it has a purpose in mind, doesn't it? It's designed to make us mentally regulated in Jehovah's thinking, or to put Jehovah's mind in us. That's what the footnote at Ephesians 6:4 says. Now, the table of the demons has a similar objective. It has the objective of putting Satan, the devil's mind, in humans. No wonder the Apostle Paul says there, I do not want you to be sharers with the demons. Because the demons are the most ethically, spiritually, and morally vile creatures in the universe. There is no worse beings in existence. And if we're close to them, look what association we're having. Now, if you look at verse 20 there, it indicates that the table of the demons is linked with the sacrifices that the nations give. How do the nations sacrifice to the demons? How do they do this? Well, how do you and I sacrifice to Jehovah or worship Jehovah? Basically, it has to do with everything we do, don't we? It's the same with the demons. The music we listen to will tell or give evidence if we worship the demons. The dances we do will give evidence whether we worship the demons. How we dress will give evidence as to whether we worship the demons. How we entertain ourselves will give evidence if we worship the demons. And frankly, because of where we are in the stream of time, everything we do and everything that we don't do will show how we feel about the table of Jehovah and the table of the demons. Now, let's go back in time to the place in history when the table of the demons was first set up. And let's see what was on the menu back then. And we'll see what's on the menu nowadays as well. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 3. Let's look at verses 4 through 6. Genesis chapter 3, verses 4 through 6. And we know this is when the serpent, Satan the devil, approached the first woman, Eve. And notice what he says to her, verses 4 through 6. It says, At this the serpent said to the woman, You positively will not die. For God knows that in the very day of your eating from it, your eyes are bound to be opened, and you are bound to be like God, knowing good and bad. Consequently, the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was something to be longed for to the eyes. Yes, the tree was desirable to look upon. So she began taking of its fruit and eating it. Afterward, she gave some also to her husband when with her, and he began eating it. Here, when we look at those verses, we see the first examples of bad association and how detrimental bad association is, don't we? Satan to Eve, Eve to her husband Adam, what did it lead to? Disobedience to God. That's the formula. Bad association to a person, disobedience to God. That's the way it works. Satan fed this first woman, Eve, lies. He fed her lies, and he had an objective. He wanted to gain her worship. That's why he lied to her. You will not be happy, you will not be free, unless you disobey Jehovah's standards. That's in essence what he told Eve. You won't be happy, you will not be free, until you do what I'm telling you to do. Till you do what your heart is driving you to do. 6,000 years later, the same message of rebellion against God and his standards is pervasive in music, movies, and literature worldwide. No wonder the Bible frankly states that Satan is misleading the entire inhabited earth in our day. Powerful stuff that food is, isn't it? The food of rebellion, though, soon took on a more sensual, dark, and morally debasing state. Let's look at Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, and then we'll read verses 4 and 5. It says, now it came about that when men started to grow in numbers on the surface of the ground, and daughters were born to them, then the sons of the true God began to notice that the daughters of men, that they were good looking, and they went taking wives for themselves, namely all whom they chose. Verses 4 and 5. The Nephilim proved to be in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of the true God continued to have relations with the daughters of men, and they bore sons to them. They were the mighty ones who were of old, the men of fame. Consequently, Jehovah saw that the badness of man was abundant in the earth, and every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only bad all the time. In the invisible heavens, Satan, the devil, sought support for his rebellion against God. He wanted some of his angelic brothers to join him in fighting against Jehovah and his purpose. And what did he do? Well, he continued to stick with his theme. Happiness and freedom is achieved if we rebel against Jehovah. Happiness and freedom, but now he added a powerful sensual element, didn't he? Sexual intercourse was introduced. Sexual intercourse. And this was very interesting that he would do this, because the angels were not designed for sexual intercourse. There was a perversion for them to look at the women. But whatever happened here, whether he came down to the earth, materialized, had sexual intercourse and went back and told them about it, or if he told them to keep looking at humans who did that so that they would start to want to see how that would be. Whatever the case, the Bible says that they began to notice. And we know that Satan the devil was the perpetrator of this whole situation, because in the book of Revelation it says that he, with his tail, dragged a third of the stars from heaven. So he was the one that told them, look, humans can have sex, but you can't. Is that right? You've been here longer. Jehovah is depriving you of happiness and freedom. Let's go down there and take what we want. Well, what happened here? Well, the result in this situation is described in the Bible as excessive fornication and the going after the flesh for unnatural use. So now added to the bad association, which is always at the table of the demons, bad association, rebellion, disobedience, now we put fornication and violence. Violence came to be a part of this now too. See, Because you see what they said the angels did? They came down to earth and they took whatever woman they wanted. What if she was already married? They took her. What if she didn't want to marry them? They took her. Their sons, these Nephilim, perpetrated acts of violence on those innocent people. They bullied everybody, beat them up, took things, strong-armed everybody. So violence came to be a part of the table of demons. So we can see the table of demons had been set, and what an unholy meal it was and still continues to be today. Remember, bad association, lies, rebellion, disobedience, sexual perversion, and violence. And we want to remember too, when we say sexual perversion, we are not just speaking of homosexuality and pedophilia. Those are sexual perversion. Fornication is sexual perversion. Fornication between a man and a woman, between boys and girls who are not married, because Jehovah did not create the procreative organs to be used outside of marriage. So anybody commits fornication, it's a perversion. It's a sexual perversion. And that is what the demons want. Anyone displaying or consenting such attitude, or consenting with such attitudes or behaviors, constitutes himself or herself as feeding at the tables of the demons. Now, let's look at how the devil has used that table in past times and in modern times. Let's look at 1 John, the 2nd chapter, verse 16. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. It says this, it says, because everything in the world, the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the showy display of one's means of life does not originate with the Father, but originates with the world. So we can see from this verse that nothing in the world originates with Jehovah God. As it mentions here, everything comes from Satan, the demons, or from humans themselves. And of course, everything that comes from humans, some mundane things, not all of them are necessarily bad, but they don't originate with Jehovah. Now, John identifies elements of the world in that verse that are definitely satanic and demonic. He says the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the showy display of one's means of life. Now we're going to focus on the desire of the eyes for a moment. Because remember, when he lied to Eve and introduced her to a course of rebellion and disobedience, what was it that motivated Eve to actually act on his suggestion? What was it? Well, remember what the verse said at Genesis 3:6. It says that the tree became something to be longed for to the eyes. The tree was desirable to look upon. That's what the Bible says. And how was this also true with the angels who became demons? Well, somehow the devil convinced them, he persuaded them, or he seduced them through their eyes. They kept looking at these women from their vantage point, and they started to have lust for women. So the eyes were used in both instances to corrupt a person's heart and mind. The desire of the eyes referred to at 1 John 2:16 is a direct reference to the power our eyes play in causing us to covet things that we are not entitled to, or things that are morally wrong. Today too, the table of the demons is filled with pornography. Pornography is something that hundreds of millions of humans are sinfully involved with at this present time. Pornography is on the internet. Pornography is on the television. Pornography is on the telephone. Pornography is on the cell phone. Pornography is in some newspaper ads. I found that out this week. Pornography is in books and videos. Do you look at pornography? Do I look at it? If any of us look at pornography, we are feeding at the table of the demons. And the pattern holds true. Bad association, these people who are fornicating, displaying their sexual conduct for everybody to see, that's bad association. Lies about sex are presented as truth in perverted images. Disobedience and rebellion against Jehovah God and his standard is what pornography is all about. Never forget that. That's what it's all about. Disobedience to Jehovah and his standard. Degrading sexual perversion has become the norm in millions of pieces of pornographic material. And this material saturates the planet Earth as never before. There is just no end to this material. Right now there isn't. But there's only one end for those who fall into the trap of continually viewing it. Look at what the Bible says here in Jude, verses 6 and 7. Look what the Bible says there, Jude 6 and 7. It says, "And the angels that did not keep their original position, but forsook their own proper dwelling place, he is reserved with eternal bonds under dense darkness for the judgment of the great day. So too Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them, after they in the same manner as the foregoing ones had committed fornication excessively, and gone out after flesh for unnatural use, are placed before us as a warning example by undergoing the judicial punishment of everlasting fire." Yes, the Bible tells us that the angels who left heaven engaged in pornographic behavior, didn't they? The men and boys of Sodom and Gomorrah engaged in pornographic behavior. And what was the outcome? Those angels are still alive right now, temporarily, but they are in dense spiritual and moral darkness. And they just have one outcome for them, the judgment of the great day of Jehovah for them. The men in Sodom and Gomorrah, the Bible says, they are a warning example of judicial punishment of everlasting fire. Eternal destruction is what they received. So we have to watch out. For those who take pleasure in viewing persons commit fornication excessively, and those who go out after flesh for unnatural use, there's only one outcome. And what a trap the demons have set for those who curiously sample pornography. It's insidious what they've done. I'll tell you about this pornography. The first way, and there's two ways we're just going to mention briefly. When a person looks at pornography, the way it's set up is that these images, even if a person looks at them for just a little time, a few seconds, they become imprinted in the mind. Can't stop thinking about them. And if you can't stop thinking about them, it could create a desire to look at more. It's the first way that these are very insidious. Just a few seconds of viewing, just a curious peek, put something in your mind that 20 years later you may still not be able to get out of your mind. Secondly, is what I like to refer to as the tar pit phenomena with pornography, the tar pit phenomena. Do you know anything about a tar pit? There are a few examples on the planet Earth. And what a tar pit is, they're pools that come up from the bottom or from underground, and they're basically crude oil, asphalt, naturally produced in the earth, and they come up and they're black and they're slick, sticky. But in the wintertime, if it was cold, a person could walk on them. And these things have come up for thousands of years. In fact, they have one in Los Angeles, a place called La Brea, and they've taken millions and millions of bones from that pit. Over 1,000 years, evidently, things died there. But everything that got stuck in it died. Nothing survives. Anything that gets stuck in the tar pit, it dies. What happens is that the animal walks into the tar pit thinking he can stand there, and if it's a hot day, he gets stuck, and he sinks down. Now what happens too, let's say this was a mammoth or a sloth. Well, what about the pack of wolves? When they see that thing there, they think, oh, it's a free meal. And they jump on it, and what happens when they try to get out? Well, they sink and get stuck too. What about the vultures that spiral around? They see these bones rotting there, and they think they got a free meal when they land in it to eat the bones, and they get stuck. And that's how thousands of things have been trapped in these tar pits. Well, pornography is like that. A person look at pornography and think that they have control of the situation, maybe like that wolf or like that mammoth, they could walk across it. But when you get stuck in it, it sucks you down. Go under, and all that's left, thousands of years later, is bones. That's all they pull out is bones, decomposed there, and that. Nothing that gets trapped in there lives. And the same is true with pornography. Persons start looking at that thing and they can break free, it gets harder and harder to get out of it. And they get trapped in it, and they just die there. So that's something for us to think about when it comes to it. Now, closely related to the viewing of pornography and catering to the desire of the eyes is looking at scenes on television or movies or music videos where sexual behavior is simulated. And again, that's whether that's in a bedroom scene on a movie or on a television program, or if it's featured in a music video by the perverted dancing that these women do on those music videos. Those things are also detestable, and notice what they lead to. Look at Numbers, the 25th chapter. Numbers 25. It says this: Now Israel was dwelling in Shittim. Then the people started to have immoral relations with the daughters of Moab. Verses 2 and 3 there. And the women came calling the people to the sacrifices of their gods. And the people began to eat and to bow down to their gods. So Israel attached itself to the Baal of Peor. And the anger of Jehovah began to blaze against Israel. Now, when we look at this particular account, we can see that the immoral relations that Israel engaged in with the daughters of Moab were preceded by a festival, a revelry, a wild party, where the Israelite men evidently sat down and watched women dance in front of them. And music was played to get them ready for sexual intercourse. That's how they worshiped their gods. So they were conditioned to get ready to have sexual intercourse. So it's no wonder that that night, the Bible says 23,000 committed fornication. If you sit down and look at women dance in front of you and listen to sensual music, what are you being prepared for? Well, today, what is the devil doing? Well, today he uses this table of demons to accomplish the same thing, brothers. Music videos, TV programs where people having sex, even though the covers may be over, people, all this kissing, passion on TV. What is that all about? Music on the radio, singing about fornication, glorifying relationships that are unlawful. What is that all about? Well, it's designed to prepare people for unlawful sexual intercourse. And unfortunately, some of our brothers and sisters are looking at these things, are listening to these things. And again, no wonder that we keep getting so many disfellowship for fornication. No wonder. Because if we look at those music videos where people are gyrating and shaking and simulating sexual intercourse, it does have an effect. It's designed to prepare a person for intercourse. It is a food from the table of demons to get you prepared to worship them, engage in sex worship. That's what that's why it's put out there. That's why it's on every program. Somebody kissing and hugging and all these videos. The dances are not clean. And then you see just like when the Moabites and Midianites sent their women, who are in most of these videos? Aren't they women? Scantily dressed, turning around and wiggling. And that gets the men to thinking about that, but it's just fascinating that the girls love to look at that and they want to see if they can imitate the moves. Sometimes Christian girls want to see if they can do those same dance moves, but they're filthy. They're disgusting. They're simulating sexual intercourse. So if we simulate that, then we're getting ready for doing something that will cause Jehovah's disfavor. So we have to watch out for that. And since we have started to focus on music a little bit, let's go there. Let's talk about Exodus 32, verses 17 and 18. Exodus 32, verses 17 and 18. It says this, and Joshua began to hear the noise of the people because of their shouting. And he proceeded to say to Moses, there is a noise of battle in the camp. But he said, it is not the sound of the singing over mighty performance, and it is not the sound of the singing of defeat. It is the sound of others singing that I am hearing. The music and singing that Moses heard, he described it as the sound of others singing. It was something different. It was party, reveling music. Verse 17, Joshua said it was like noise. It was accompanied by shouting, the Bible says. It was part of a revelry or celebration condemned by Jehovah. Today, Jehovah, through his organization, has told Jehovah's Witnesses that they should stay away from all forms of rap music. We've been told that by Jehovah's organization. The question is, and this is the question, why are these clear instructions not being followed by many of our young people and their Christian parents? That's the question. God's organization has in no uncertain terms said that rap music is the music of rebellion. You can find that